The sun was setting over Haven 7, casting long shadows across the fields of tall grass that surrounded the small human colony. The air smelled of damp soil and fresh growth, a reminder of how new this place still was. Jack Harper wiped his hands on a grease-stained rag as he stepped out of the water filtration unit he had been repairing all afternoon. He looked up at the sky, where streaks of orange and purple bled into the horizon. It was quiet here, almost too quiet for someone who had grown up in the bustling cities of Earth. But after years of living on the edge of known space, Jack had learned to appreciate the silence. Claire Bennett stood a few meters away, her arms crossed as she watched him work. She was dressed in a lightweight jumpsuit, its fabric smeared with dirt from hours spent collecting samples in the nearby forest. Her dark hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and though her face was smudged with grime, there was no mistaking the sharpness in her green eyes. Claire wasn't one to sit idle, not when there were plants to catalog or rocks to analyze. This planet might have seemed barren to some, but to her, it was a treasure trove waiting to be explored. "You done yet?" Claire asked, raising an eyebrow. "I don't think I can stand another minute of watching you tinker with that thing." Jack chuckled, tossing the rag onto the ground beside him. "Almost," he said. "Just needed to recalibrate the pressure valve. If I didn't fix it, we'd lose half our clean water supply tomorrow." Claire rolled her eyes but couldn't hide the faint smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "You know, not everything has to be perfect. Sometimes good enough is, well, good enough. Not when it comes to survival," Jack replied, his tone light but firm. He turned off the machine and gave it a satisfied pat before straightening up. "There, all set." As they began walking back toward the main settlement, the crunch of gravel beneath their boots filled the otherwise silent evening. Most of the colonists had already retreated indoors, leaving only a handful of guards posted around the perimeter. Life on Haven 7 was peaceful, for now, but everyone knew better than to let their guard down completely. They were pioneers, after all, carving out a home in a part of the galaxy that hadn't exactly welcomed them with open arms. "So," Jack said, breaking the comfortable silence between them, "find anything interesting today?" Claire hesitated, for a moment her fingers absently brushing against the strap of her satchel. "Actually, yeah, something weird. You'll want to take a look at it once we get back." Jack glanced at her, curiosity piqued. "Weird how?" She shrugged. "Hard to explain. Let's just say it doesn't belong here." They reached their modest quarters, a prefab structure shared by several families, and went inside. The interior was simple. A small kitchen area, a table cluttered with tools and papers, and a couple of chairs pulled up close to a glowing heater. Claire set her bag down on the table and began rummaging through it while Jack poured himself a cup of lukewarm coffee. "All right," she said finally, pulling out a metallic object wrapped in cloth. She placed it carefully on the table and unwrapped it, revealing what looked like a smooth, oval-shaped artifact about the size of a football. Its surface shimmered faintly, catching the dim light of the room, and strange symbols etched into the metal seemed to pulse rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Jack leaned closer, his brow furrowing. "What is this?" "I found it near the edge of the forest," Claire explained. "It was buried under layers of vegetation, but something about it caught my eye. Look at those markings. They're definitely not natural." Jack picked up the artifact cautiously, turning it over in his hands. It was cool to the touch, heavier than it appeared, and emitted a faint hum that resonated deep in his chest. "This isn't human tech," he murmured, "and it's definitely not from any of the colonies." Claire nodded, her expression serious. "Exactly, which means it belongs to someone or something else." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The implications hung heavy in the air. Haven 7 was supposed to be isolated, far from the usual routes traveled by other species. The idea that aliens might have visited, or worse, left something behind, was unsettling to say the least. "We should show this to Lisa," Jack said eventually, referring to Governor Lisa Monroe, the leader of the colony. "If anyone knows what to do with it, it's her." "Maybe," Claire replied, though her tone suggested doubt. "But what if she decides to send it off-world? We don't even know what it does yet. Jack frowned. You think it's dangerous? I don't know, Claire admitted. But it feels wrong, like it shouldn't exist. Before they could discuss it further, a loud crackling noise interrupted their conversation. Both of them froze, staring at the ceiling as the lights flickered erratically. Outside, the distant sound of rustling leaves grew louder, accompanied by low guttural growls that sent chills down their spines. What the hell was that? Jack muttered, setting the artifact down quickly. He grabbed a flashlight from the counter and moved toward the door, Claire close behind him. Stepping outside, they saw flashes of movement darting between the trees at the edge of the forest. Shadows shifted unnaturally, too large and too fast to belong to any animal native to Haven 7. The guards stationed nearby were visibly tense, their weapons drawn as they scanned the darkness. Stay inside, one of them called out sharply when he noticed Jack and Claire approaching. We don't know what's out there. But Jack ignored the warning, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Something glinted high above the treetops, a faint metallic gleam that disappeared almost as soon as it appeared. Whatever it wasn't natural. Back inside, Claire locked the door and drew the blinds, her hands trembling slightly as she did so. This isn't coincidence, she whispered. That thing, it's connected somehow. Jack didn't respond right away. Instead, he stared at the artifact sitting innocently on the table, its pulsating glow casting eerie shadows across the walls. For the first time since arriving on Haven 7, he felt a deep sense of unease settle over him. Whatever they had stumbled upon, it was bigger than either of them realized, and it might already be too late to turn back. The next morning, the colony was abuzz with tension. Word of the strange artifact and the unsettling events from the night before had spread quickly among the settlers. People gathered in small groups, whispering anxiously as they speculated about what it all meant. Some thought it was nothing more than a malfunctioning piece of equipment or an animal causing trouble near the forest. Others weren't so sure. Governor Lisa Monroe called an emergency meeting in the Central Hall, a large prefabricated building that served as both a meeting place and a community center. Inside, rows of folding chairs were arranged in front of a makeshift stage, where Lisa stood alongside Jack and Claire. The room was packed with colonists, their faces etched with worry and curiosity. All right, everyone, Lisa began, her voice calm but firm. She was a tall woman in her late 40s with sharp features and graying hair tied back in a neat bun. We're here to figure out what's going on. Jack and Claire found something unusual yesterday, and we need to decide how to handle it. Claire stepped forward, holding the artifact carefully in both hands. She placed it on a table at the front of the room so everyone could see it. The shimmering metal caught the light, its pulsating glow drawing murmurs from the crowd. This is what we found, Claire explained. It's not human-made and it doesn't match anything in our database. We think it might belong to another species. A man in the back raised his hand. Are you saying aliens put it there? We don't know for sure, Jack interjected. But given what happened last night, the lights flickering, those sounds outside, it's possible someone or something knows we've got it. Knows we've got. Lisa nodded, her expression serious. Which is why we need to be cautious. For now, I'm ordering extra patrols around the perimeter and keeping communications channels open. If anyone sees or hears anything unusual, report it immediately. Before she could say more, a sudden rumble shook the ground. Glasses rattled on shelves and dust fell from the ceiling as everyone turned toward the windows. Outside, the sky darkened unnaturally, and a massive shadow loomed over the settlement. What is that? Someone shouted. Jack and Claire rushed to the door, followed by Lisa and several others. What they saw made their blood run cold. Hovering above the colony was a colossal alien ship, its sleek design unlike anything any of them had ever seen. It was shaped like an elongated diamond, with glowing blue veins running along its surface. The sheer size of it dwarfed the tiny structures below, making Haven 7 look insignificant in comparison. A smaller craft detached from the belly of the mothership and descended rapidly, landing in the clearing just outside the settlement. A group of figures emerged, clad in sleek metallic armor that reflected the dim sunlight. They moved with precision, their weapons ready but not yet raised. Leading them was a tall being with iridescent skin and piercing yellow eyes. His presence commanded attention, and he spoke in a deep, resonant voice that carried even without amplification. "I am Commander Zexor of the Vorthak Empire," he announced. "You possess something that belongs to us. Return it, and no harm will come to your people." The colonists stared in stunned silence. None of them had ever encountered aliens before, let alone ones who spoke so directly and arrogantly. Jack stepped forward cautiously, his hands raised to show he meant no threat. "We didn't steal anything," he said, his voice steady, despite the knot forming in his stomach. "We found this object buried in the forest. How do we know it's yours?" Zixor tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "It bears the markings of our civilization. That should be proof enough." Claire stepped up beside Jack, clutching the artifact protectively. "If it's so important to you, why did you leave it lying around? Seems careless for such an advanced species." A murmur rippled through the crowd of colonists, some nodding in agreement while others shot nervous glances at the heavily armed Vorthak soldiers. Zixor narrowed his eyes, clearly unaccustomed to being questioned. "That is none of your concern," he replied curtly. "Hand it over now, or we will take it by force." Lisa stepped forward, placing herself between the humans and the aliens. "With all due respect, Commander, we can't just give you something without understanding its significance. If it truly belongs to you, then prove it. Tell us what it does." For a moment, Zixor looked taken aback, as if he couldn't believe anyone would dare challenge him. Then his lips curled into a thin smile, though it held no warmth. "Very well. You wish to play games? So be it. But know this: defiance will only lead to your destruction." Without another word, he signaled his troops to retreat. The smaller craft ascended back into the belly of the mothership, which remained hovering ominously overhead. As soon as the aliens were gone, the colonists erupted into panicked chatter. "What do we do now?" one woman asked, wringing her hands. "They'll come back, won't they?" "They already think we're primitive," Claire muttered under her breath. "Imagine what they'll do when they realize we're also stubborn." Lisa raised her hands to quiet the crowd. "Everyone, stay calm. We don't know their intentions yet, but we can't afford to appear weak. Jack, Claire, keep studying that artifact. See if you can learn anything useful. In the meantime, we'll fortify our defenses and prepare for whatever comes next." As the meeting dispersed, Jack and Claire returned to their quarters, the artifact safely tucked under Claire's arm. Neither of them spoke until they were inside, the door locked behind them. "This isn't good," Jack said finally, pacing back and forth. "Even if they're bluffing about attacking us, they've got the upper hand. Look at that ship. It's a floating fortress." Claire set the artifact down on the table and crossed her arms. "Maybe, but they don't know us. They have no idea what we're capable of." Jack stopped pacing and looked at her. "And what exactly are we capable of? We're farmers and engineers, not soldiers." "We're survivors," Claire countered. "That's got to count for something." Over the next few days, life in the colony became increasingly tense. The Vorthak ship remained stationed above Haven 7, casting a long shadow over the settlement. Drones zipped through the air, scanning buildings and fields, disrupting communications and cutting off access to vital resources. It was clear the aliens were testing the humans, probing for weaknesses. In response, Governor Lisa ordered the construction of barricades around the perimeter and organized drills to prepare the colonists for potential conflict. Jack and Claire worked tirelessly to study the artifact, hoping to unlock its secrets. They discovered that the symbols on its surface changed patterns depending on how it was handled, almost as if it were reacting to their touch. But beyond that, its purpose remained a mystery. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack sat slumped in a chair staring at the artifact. "What if it's a weapon?" he asked quietly. "Something they left behind and don't want us messing with? Or maybe it's a key, Claire suggested. To what, I don't know. But if it's valuable enough for them to threaten us over, it's worth protecting. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Ryan Cole, a burly mechanic with a knack for improvisation, stood outside looking grim. We've got trouble, he said. Their drones are targeting the power grid. If we don't act fast, we'll lose everything. Jack and Claire exchanged a glance. This was it, the moment they'd been dreading. The Vorthak weren't just observing anymore, they were escalating. All right, Jack said, standing up. Let's show them we're not as helpless as they think. The power grid was the lifeblood of Haven 7. Without it, the colony would plunge into darkness, literally and figuratively. The Vorthak drones had already disabled 2 substations, their sleek, insect-like forms hovering menacingly over the settlement as they fired beams of energy that fried circuits and melted wires. Panic spread quickly among the colonists, who scrambled to salvage what they could before the entire system collapsed. Jack, Claire, and Ryan hurried toward the main generator station, where a group of volunteers had gathered to defend the last operational substation. Armed with makeshift weapons, welding torches, modified farming tools, and whatever else they could cobble together, they formed a ragtag barrier around the building. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. We can't let them take this, Ryan said grimly, tightening his grip on a plasma cutter he'd repurposed from mining equipment. If we lose the generator, we're done for. Claire nodded, her eyes scanning the sky for any sign of the drones. They're testing us, seeing how far they can push before we break. And we're not breaking, Jack added firmly, not today. As if on cue, 3 drones descended from above, their glowing cores pulsing ominously. The colonists braced themselves, gripping their improvised weapons tightly. When the first drone unleashed a burst of energy, Ryan swung into action, using the plasma cutter to deflect the blast back at the machine. Sparks flew as the beam hit its mark, causing the drone to falter mid-air. A second shot from another volunteer sent it crashing to the ground in a heap of smoking metal. Cheers erupted briefly among the defenders, but there was no time to celebrate. The remaining drones retaliated with renewed aggression, forcing the humans to scatter. Jack dove behind a pile of crates, narrowly avoiding a searing beam that left a blackened scar on the wall behind him. Claire crouched nearby, clutching the artifact protectively despite the chaos unfolding around them. Why, are you still holding onto that thing? Jack shouted over the din. It's dangerous. And so is losing it, Claire shot back. If we give up now, they win. Her words struck a chord. These people weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for dignity. For years, humanity had been seen as weak, insignificant compared to the advanced civilizations scattered across the galaxy. But here, on the edge of known space, they were proving that even the smallest spark could ignite a firestorm. When the drones regrouped for another assault, Jack spotted an opportunity. Grabbing a length of cable from the ground, he looped it around one of the machines and yanked hard, pulling it off balance. Another colonist rushed forward, smashing the drone with a heavy wrench until it sparked and fell silent. One by one, the humans fought back with everything they had, turning desperation into determination. By the time the attack ended, the field outside the generator station was littered with the wreckage of alien technology. Exhausted but victorious, the colonists cheered again, this time louder and more defiant. Word of their success spread quickly through the settlement, boosting morale and inspiring others to join the effort to protect Haven 7. Meanwhile, aboard the Vorthak mothership, Commander Zixer watched the footage of the battle with growing frustration. He sat in his command chair, surrounded by holographic displays showing various angles of the skirmish. His subordinate stood nearby, visibly uneasy under his piercing gaze. "How is this possible?" Zixor demanded, his voice low but laced with anger. "A primitive species manages to destroy our drones? Explain this failure." One of his officers hesitated before speaking. "Their weapons. They appear to be improvised. Primitive, yet effective against our standard defenses." Zixor's expression darkened. "Effective? Against us? Ridiculous." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Clearly we underestimated them. That ends now. He turned to another officer. Prepare a strike team. We will retrieve the artifact ourselves and eliminate any resistance. Yes, Commander, the officer replied, bowing slightly before hurrying away. As the preparations began, Zixor stared out at the tiny colony below. These humans baffled him. They lacked the technology, the resources, and the discipline of a true galactic power, yet they refused to yield. It was infuriating and intriguing. For centuries, the Vorthak had ruled through fear and intimidation, crushing dissent without hesitation. But these settlers, they were different. They didn't back down when faced with overwhelming odds. Instead, they adapted, fought harder, and found ways to survive. Perhaps Zixor thought they posed more of a threat than he had initially realized. Back on the surface, Governor Lisa Monroe called another meeting to discuss the next steps. The mood was markedly different from the previous gathering. Gone was the uncertainty. In its place was a steely resolve. The colonists had proven they could stand their ground, and now they were ready to fight back. We've shown them we won't go quietly, Lisa said, addressing the crowd. But make no mistake, they'll return and they'll bring more firepower. We need to prepare for a full-scale assault. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. People volunteered ideas, offering suggestions based on their skills. Farmers proposed digging trenches to slow down enemy movements, while engineers brainstormed ways to upgrade their defenses using salvaged materials. Even children helped, gathering supplies and keeping watch for any signs of trouble. Jack and Claire worked late into the night, collaborating with Ryan and other mechanics to retrofit old mining rigs into mobile combat vehicles. Equipped with reinforced plating and mounted weapons, these makeshift tanks became the backbone of the colony's defense strategy. They also developed a prototype EMP device designed to disrupt the Vorthak's advanced technology. A risky gamble, but one they hoped would pay off. Sarah Mitchell, a former soldier who had taken charge of organizing the militia, led training sessions to teach the colonists basic combat tactics. Though many of them had never held a weapon before, their determination made up for their lack of experience. Under Sarah's guidance, they practiced ambush techniques, learning how to use the terrain to their advantage. You might not be soldiers, Sarah told them during one session, but you're fighters, and sometimes that's all it takes. As the days passed, Haven 7 transformed from a quiet outpost into a fortified stronghold. Barricades lined the perimeter, manned by vigilant guards armed with whatever weapons they could scavenge or build. Lights illuminated the fields surrounding the settlement, ensuring no intruder could approach undetected. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and vastly outmatched, but they weren't afraid anymore. Then came the night when the Vorthak returned. It started with a deafening roar as several assault craft descended from the mothership, disgorging squads of heavily armored troops. Lasers streaked across the sky, lighting up the darkness as the aliens advanced toward the colony. Alarms blared throughout the settlement, waking those who had managed to sleep and sending everyone rushing to their assigned posts. Jack climbed into one of the modified mining rigs alongside Ryan, his hands gripping the controls tightly. "Ready?" Ryan asked, checking the weapon systems. "As I'll ever be," Jack replied, his voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Nearby, Claire joined Sarah and a group of volunteers stationed near the barricades. Each of them carried crude explosives rigged to detonate on impact, along with EMP grenades designed to disable the Vorthak's shields. Claire clutched the artifact close, unwilling to let it out of her sight. The battle began with a barrage of laser fire from both sides. The Vorthak pressed forward relentlessly, their superior numbers threatening to overwhelm the humans. But the colonists fought back with ferocity, using every trick they had learned to hold their ground. Mining rigs rolled into position, unleashing torrents of plasma blasts that tore through enemy ranks. Guerrilla teams launched surprise attacks from hidden positions, targeting the aliens' weak points and forcing them to retreat temporarily. At one point, Jack and Ryan drove their rig directly into the path of an advancing Vorthak squad, firing non-stop as they plowed through the invaders. The vehicle took heavy damage, smoke billowing from its engine, but it held together long enough for reinforcements to arrive and finish off the remaining enemies. Meanwhile, Claire and her team activated the EMP devices, creating a temporary blackout that disrupted the Vorthak's communications and shields. Seizing the opportunity, Sarah led a counterattack that pushed the aliens back further, reclaiming ground they had lost earlier in the fight. By dawn, the battlefield was eerily quiet. The Vorthak forces had withdrawn, leaving behind a trail of destruction, but also proof of humanity's resilience. Bodies of fallen aliens lay scattered across the landscape, their once imposing armor reduced to charred fragments. The colonists emerged cautiously from their positions, exhausted but triumphant. Governor Lisa surveyed the aftermath, her face etched with pride and sorrow. Several colonists had lost their lives during the battle, their sacrifices ensuring the survival of the rest. As she addressed the survivors, her voice trembled with emotion. "They came to take what was ours," she said, "but they underestimated us. They thought we were weak, insignificant. Tonight, we showed them otherwise." Cheers erupted, echoing across the battered settlement. For the first time in days, hope replaced fear. The humans of Haven 7 had stood toe-to-toe with a galactic superpower and won. But the victory at Haven 7 was short-lived. While the colonists had managed to repel the Vorthak forces, they knew it was only a matter of time before the aliens returned, with even greater numbers and more advanced weapons. The mood in the settlement shifted from triumph to grim determination, as everyone prepared for what was sure to be an even fiercer battle. Jack, Claire, and the others were acutely aware that their survival depended not just on courage, but on ingenuity and teamwork. Word of Haven 7's defiance spread quickly across the galaxy. News traveled fast when something unexpected happened, especially when it involved a lesser-known species like humanity, standing up to the mighty Vorthak. Other colonies near Haven 7 began sending messages of support, offering supplies, reinforcements, and advice. Some ships arrived within days carrying volunteers eager to help defend the small settlement. Among them was Daniel Hayes, a former military strategist who had served in several interstellar conflicts. His arrival brought both relief and renewed hope to the colonists. Daniel wasted no time getting to work. He met with Governor Lisa, Jack, Claire, and Sarah to assess the colony's defenses and strategize for the next attack. With his sharp mind and years of experience, he quickly identified weaknesses in their current setup and proposed bold solutions. "We can't rely solely on brute force," Daniel explained during one planning session. "They'll overwhelm us if we do. We need to use our environment, our creativity, and most importantly, our unpredictability." He suggested creating decoys to mislead the Vorthak forces, setting traps in key locations, and using hit-and-run tactics to wear them down over time. The idea was simple. Make the enemy think twice about every move they made, forcing them to expend resources unnecessarily while keeping the humans' true strength hidden. Jack nodded thoughtfully. "Makes sense. They're used to dealing with civilizations that follow predictable patterns. If we throw them off balance, we might stand a chance." Claire added, "And we still have the artifact. Whatever it is, it's clearly important. To them, that gives us leverage, if we can figure out how to use it." While Daniel worked with the colonists to fortify Haven 7, Jack and Claire continued studying the mysterious object. They spent long hours in their makeshift lab, running tests and analyzing its properties. Slowly, they began to uncover more about how it functioned. The symbols etched into its surface seemed to react to certain frequencies of light and sound, shifting and rearranging themselves in response. It was as though the artifact was alive, communicating in a language no human could fully understand. One evening, after days of trial and error, Claire noticed something unusual. When exposed to a specific combination of vibrations and electromagnetic pulses, the artifact emitted a faint hum that resonated through the room. She called Jack over excitedly. "Listen to this," she said, adjusting the equipment. "I think it's trying to tell us something." Jack leaned closer, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Or maybe it's activating. Do you think it's some kind of weapon? It's possible, Claire admitted. But we won't know unless we test it. With Daniel's guidance, they decided to incorporate the artifact into their defensive strategy. Using spare parts and salvaged materials, they built a prototype device capable of amplifying the artifact's energy output. They called it Project Thunderstrike. Though untested, it represented their best shot at leveling the playing field against the Vorthak. As preparations intensified, so did the tension in the colony. Everyone knew the next attack would be decisive. The Vorthak wouldn't tolerate failure again. They would come back with everything they had. Scouts reported increased activity aboard the mothership, including the deployment of additional assault, craft, and troop transports. It was clear the aliens were gearing up for a full-scale invasion. Governor Lisa addressed the colonists one final time before the storm hit. Standing atop the steps of the central hall, she looked out at the faces of men, women, and children who had become her family over the years. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion. "They underestimated us once," she said. "They won't do it again. But remember this, we're not fighting just for ourselves. We're fighting for every human being who has ever been told they don't belong, that they aren't strong enough. Tonight we show them what humanity is made of." Her words ignited a fire in everyone present. Cheers erupted, echoing through the settlement as people embraced loved ones, checked their weapons, and took their positions. The humans of Haven 7 were ready, not because they believed they would win, but because they refused to lose without a fight. When the Vorthak finally struck, it was with devastating force. Their fleet descended upon Haven 7 like a swarm of locusts, blotting out the stars and casting the colony into shadow. Assault craft rained destruction from above, targeting buildings, barricades, and anything else that stood in their way. Troop transports landed in waves, disgorging endless streams of soldiers armed with cutting-edge weaponry. But the humans were waiting. Using the decoys Daniel had designed, the colonists lured the first wave of attackers into traps hidden throughout the settlement. Explosive charges detonated underfoot, sending shockwaves rippling through the ranks of the invaders. Guerrilla teams ambushed squads caught off guard, striking hard and fast before disappearing into the darkness. Every movement was calculated, every action aimed at slowing the Vorthak advance. In the chaos, Jack and Ryan piloted one of the mining rigs toward the heart of the enemy formation. Armed with mounted plasma cannons and reinforced plating, the vehicle cut a path through the alien forces, leaving trails of destruction in its wake. Despite taking heavy damage, Jack refused to retreat, knowing that holding the line meant giving the rest of the colony a fighting chance. Meanwhile, Claire and Sarah led a daring raid on one of the landed troop transports. Using EMP grenades and improvised explosives, they disabled the craft's engines and communications systems, trapping dozens of Vorthak soldiers inside. As the aliens tried to escape, Claire activated Project Thunderstrike for the first time. The results were catastrophic for the Vorthak. A burst of amplified energy surged outward from the artifact, disrupting the shields and weapons of nearby enemies. Entire squads collapsed in confusion as their technology failed them, leaving them vulnerable to the relentless attacks of the humans. For a brief moment, the tide of the battle turned decisively in favor of Haven 7, but the Vorthak weren't finished yet. Reinforcements poured in, overwhelming the defenders with sheer numbers. Casualties mounted on both sides as the humans fought desperately to hold their ground. Barricades crumbled, vehicles were destroyed, and the air grew thick with smoke and ash. Just when it seemed the colony would fall, salvation arrived in the form of reinforcements from neighboring settlements. Ships appeared on the horizon, swooping in to engage the Vorthak fleet. Pilots launched strafing runs against the larger vessels, drawing fire away from the surface and giving the colonists a much-needed reprieve. Encouraged by the sudden influx of allies, the humans redoubled their efforts. Together they pushed the Vorthak forces back step by step, reclaiming territory they had lost earlier in the battle. By dawn, the invaders had been driven off entirely, retreating to their mothership with heavy losses. As the dust settled and The smoke cleared, the survivors of Haven 7 gathered amidst the ruins of their home. Exhausted but unbowed, they stared up at the massive alien vessel hovering above them. Though battered and bruised, they had proven something vital, not just to themselves but to the entire galaxy. Humanity wasn't weak. Humanity didn't give up. And humanity certainly didn't know the meaning of overkill. For now, the Vorthak had fled. But everyone knew this wasn't the end. The victory at Haven 7 sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of the battle spread like wildfire, carried by traitors, diplomats, and even rogue journalists who couldn't resist sharing the story of a small human colony standing toe-to-toe with the mighty Vorthak. For centuries, the Vorthak had been seen as untouchable. A dominant force feared not only for their advanced technology, but also for their ruthless efficiency in crushing any opposition. Yet here was a group of humans, barely scraping by on the fringes of known space, managing to humiliate them. At first, many dismissed the reports as exaggeration or outright lies. How could a species so young and inexperienced pose such a threat? But as more details emerged, verified by eyewitness accounts and intercepted communications, the truth became undeniable. Humanity wasn't just surviving. It was thriving, adapting, and fighting back in ways no one had anticipated. Diplomatic envoys from neighboring systems began arriving at Haven 7 within days of the battle. Their ships landed cautiously, their crews stepping out with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Some came offering alliances, eager to curry favor with a species that had proven itself capable of taking on the Vorthak. Others arrived with thinly veiled warnings, urging the humans to tread carefully lest they provoke further retaliation. Governor Lisa Monroe handled these visitors with grace and firmness. She welcomed them into the settlement, allowing them to see the damage caused by the Vorthak attack while emphasizing the resilience of her people. "We don't seek war," she told each envoy in turn. "But we won't bow to threats either. If you want peace with us, then respect our boundaries." Her words resonated deeply with some delegations, particularly those from smaller, less powerful civilizations who saw potential allies in humanity. A representative from the Kalari Union, a coalition of trade-focused species, expressed admiration for the colonists' ingenuity. "You've shown the galaxy that strength isn't always about numbers or weapons," he said during one meeting. "It's about spirit. That's something worth protecting." Others, however, weren't so impressed. An ambassador from the Zarnok Collective, a militaristic empire rivaling the Vorthak, issued a stark warning. "Your actions have destabilized this region," he said coldly. "The Vorthak will not forgive this insult, and neither will others if you continue down this path." Lisa listened patiently but stood her ground. "We didn't start this fight," she replied, "but we'll finish it if we have to. Tell your leaders this: humanity doesn't back down when faced with injustice." Amidst the influx of visitors, rumors swirled about the artifact that had sparked the entire conflict. Speculation ranged from wild theories to grounded analysis, but no one could agree on its true purpose. Some believed it was an ancient weapon capable of unimaginable destruction. Others thought it might be a relic tied to a long-lost super-civilization, holding secrets that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Jack and Claire continued studying the object, determined to unlock its mysteries before anyone else could claim it. With help from Daniel Hayes and a few visiting scientists, they conducted new experiments, exposing the artifact to various stimuli in hopes of triggering another reaction. Progress was slow, but they remained hopeful. One breakthrough came unexpectedly. While testing the artifact's response to different frequencies of light, Claire noticed that the symbols on its surface began rearranging themselves into patterns resembling star charts. Jack leaned closer, his eyes widening as he realized what they were looking at. "Coordinates," he murmured. "It's showing us where it came from." Claire nodded, excitement bubbling beneath her calm exterior. "If we can figure out which system these coordinates point to, maybe we can learn more about whoever left it behind." They shared their findings with Governor Lisa, who immediately recognized the implications. "This changes everything," she said. If the artifact belongs to someone else even older and more powerful than the Vorthak, we need to handle this carefully. Daniel chimed in, his tone cautious. Or destroy it. Whatever this thing is, it's already caused enough trouble. Imagine what would happen if the wrong people got their hands on it. Jack shook his head. We can't make that call yet. Not until we understand its full potential. As the debate over the artifact continued, tensions escalated elsewhere. The Vorthak fleet, though driven off temporarily, hadn't disappeared entirely. Scouting parties reported increased activity near Haven 7, suggesting that Commander Zixor was regrouping and planning his next move. Spies embedded among the envoys whispered tales of reinforcements being called in from distant sectors, hinting at a larger-scale assault looming on the horizon. Back aboard his mothership, Zixor paced angrily, replaying footage of the battle. In his mind, he couldn't comprehend how such a primitive species had managed to repel his forces, not once but twice. It gnawed at him, challenging everything he believed about dominance and control. We underestimated them, one of his officers admitted hesitantly. They adapted faster than we anticipated, used tactics we didn't expect. Zixor slammed his fist against the console, causing the holographic displays to flicker. Adaptation means nothing without discipline, he snapped. Their defiance is a flaw, not a strength, and flaws can be exploited. He turned to face his crew, his expression hardening. Prepare the fleet for total annihilation. I want every resource dedicated to eradicating Haven 7. This time, there will be no survivors. Unaware of Zixor's plans, the humans of Haven 7 focused on preparing for whatever came next. Supplies poured in from allied colonies, including weapons, medical kits, and raw materials for building new defenses. Volunteers trained tirelessly under Sarah Mitchell's guidance, honing their combat skills and learning to work together as a cohesive unit. Engineers worked around the clock to repair damaged vehicles and fortify key positions throughout the settlement. In the evenings, when the work was done and the sun dipped below the horizon, people gathered around campfires to share stories and reflect on what they had accomplished. Despite the looming threat, there was a sense of camaraderie that hadn't existed before the battle. They had faced impossible odds and come out stronger, not because they were invincible, but because they refused to give up. Jack often found himself sitting quietly with Claire, watching the flames dance as they talked about the future. Do you think we'll ever find out what this artifact really is? He asked one night, nodding toward the object resting nearby. Claire shrugged, her gaze thoughtful. Maybe, or maybe it's better if we don't. Either way, it's changed us, made us realize what we're capable of. Jack smiled faintly. Yeah, guess that's something. Days turned into weeks, and the Vorthak fleet remained ominously present in orbit above Haven 7. The humans braced themselves for another attack, knowing it was inevitable. But instead of fear, there was resolve. They had proven they could stand their ground, and they were ready to do it again, if necessary. Then, late one night, the artifact reacted suddenly. Its surface lit up with an intense glow, pulsing rapidly as if responding to something far away. Alarms blared across the settlement as sensors detected a massive energy signature approaching from deep space. Moments later, a fleet of unknown origin emerged from hyperspace, dwarfing even the Vorthak mothership. No one knew who these newcomers were, or why they had come. But one thing was certain. The galaxy's attention was now firmly fixed on Haven 7, and humanity was about to step onto a much bigger stage. The arrival of the mysterious fleet sent shockwaves through Haven 7. The ships were massive, their sleek designs unlike anything the humans had ever seen. They glowed faintly with an otherworldly light, and their movements were eerily silent as they positioned themselves between the Vorthak mothership and the colony below. For a moment, everyone held their breath, unsure whether this new force was friend or foe. Governor Lisa Monroe quickly called an emergency meeting in the central hall. Jack, Claire, Daniel, Sarah, and several others gathered around a large table, staring at holographic projections of the unknown vessels. Tension filled the room, but beneath it was a flicker of hope. Maybe these newcomers weren't enemies. Maybe they were here to help. We don't know who they are, Lisa began, her voice steady. despite the uncertainty hanging over them. But we need to be ready for anything. If they're hostile, we fight. If they're allies, we negotiate carefully. Claire glanced at the artifact, which still pulsed faintly on the table. Could it have summoned them? It reacted before they arrived. Jack nodded slowly. It's possible. Whatever this thing is, it seems to have connections far beyond us. Daniel leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. If they're advanced enough to appear out of nowhere like that, they might see us as insignificant or worse, a threat. We need to tread carefully. As the discussion continued, one of the ships detached from the fleet and descended toward the surface. Its smooth, curved hull shimmered as it landed gently outside the settlement, kicking up clouds of dust. A ramp extended from its side and figures emerged, tall, slender beings with translucent skin that shimmered like liquid crystal. Their eyes glowed softly, and their movements were graceful, almost hypnotic. A delegation led by Governor Lisa approached, cautiously, armed but not aggressive. One of the beings stepped forward, raising a hand in what appeared to be a gesture of peace. Though it didn't speak aloud, its voice echoed directly in their minds. "We are the Arathan," it said, its tone calm and measured. "We have come, seeking the relic you possess." Claire tightened her grip on the artifact which she carried with her. "Why do you want it?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "The relic holds great power," the Arathan replied. "Power that could destroy entire civilizations if misused. It belongs to us. It was created by our ancestors long ago." Governor Lisa exchanged a glance with Jack and Claire before responding. "How can we trust you? The Vorthak claimed it belonged to them too." The Arathan tilted its head slightly, as if considering her words. "The Vorthak are scavengers, taking what does not belong to them. We are its rightful guardians. Return it to us and we will ensure your safety." Before Lisa could respond, Commander Zixor's voice crackled over the colony's communication system. His ship had moved closer, its weapons trained on both the humans and the Arathan. "You dare interfere, Arathan," he growled. "This matter concerns only the Vorthak and the humans." The Arathan turned toward the Vorthak vessel, their glowing eyes narrowing imperceptibly. "Leave this place, Zixor," they said, their mental voice carrying an edge of authority. "Your aggression ends here." For a moment there was silence. Then, without warning, the Vorthak opened fire. Bright beams of energy lanced out from their ship, striking the Arathan vessel. But instead of causing damage, the shots dissipated, harmlessly against an invisible barrier surrounding the newcomers. The Arathan responded instantly. A pulse of energy erupted from their ship, rippling outward like a wave. When it hit the Vorthak mothership, the massive vessel shuddered violently, its systems failing as lights flickered and alarms blared. Within seconds, the once dominant warship was rendered powerless, drifting helplessly in orbit. Commander Zixor's voice came again, now tinged with panic. "You cannot do this. The galaxy will not tolerate your interference." The Arathan ignored him, turning back to the humans. "Return the relic to us," they repeated, "and we will leave this system, ensuring your survival." Claire hesitated, clutching the artifact tightly. She glanced at Jack, who gave her a subtle nod. Together they stepped forward, holding the object out toward the Arathan. "Take it," Claire said firmly. "But promise us one thing. Use its power wisely. Don't let it fall into the wrong hands again." The Arathan studied them for a moment, then reached out and took the artifact. As soon as it left Claire's hands, the pulsating glow faded, leaving the object inert. Without another word, the beings turned and walked back to their ship, disappearing inside. Moments later, the vessel ascended into the sky, joining the rest of the fleet as they vanished into hyperspace. With the Arathan gone and the Vorthak fleet crippled, the immediate threat to Haven 7 was over. But the aftermath of the battle, and the arrival of the mysterious newcomers, left a lasting impact on the galaxy. Word spread rapidly about how humanity had stood its ground against two vastly superior forces, earning both respect and fear. Diplomatic envoys returned to Haven 7, this time with offers of formal alliances and trade agreements. Smaller civilizations saw potential partners in humanity, while larger empires viewed them with cautious admiration. Some even began referring to humans as the wild card of the galaxy, a species unpredictable, resourceful, and unafraid to challenge those who sought to dominate them. Jack and Claire found themselves at the center of attention, hailed as heroes for their role in uncovering the artifact's secrets and standing firm against overwhelming odds. But they remained humble, focusing instead on rebuilding their home and preparing for whatever challenges lay ahead. During a quiet evening, weeks later, Jack sat with Claire near the edge of the settlement, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. "Do you think we'll ever see the Arathan again?" he asked. Claire shrugged, her gaze distant. "Maybe, or maybe not. Either way, I'm glad we got rid of that thing. It brought nothing but trouble." Jack chuckled softly. "Yeah, but look, what it did for us. We proved something, didn't we? That we're not just some weak little species trying to survive. We're fighters." Claire smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "And survivors." Across the galaxy, the legend of Haven 7 grew. To some, humanity became a symbol of hope, a reminder that courage and determination could overcome even the greatest odds. To others, they were a cautionary tale, proof that underestimating any opponent could lead to disaster. For Commander Zixor and the Vorthak, the defeat was humiliating. Their empire, once feared across the stars, now faced whispers of rebellion from oppressed worlds emboldened by humanity's example. Zixor himself was stripped of his command, exiled to a remote outpost as punishment for his failure. But for Jack, Claire, and the people of Haven 7, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after everything they'd been through. The scars of battle remained, etched into the landscape in their memories, but so did the pride of knowing they had faced the impossible and won. And somewhere deep within the wreckage of the Vorthak mothership, fragments of data hinted at unanswered questions. What exactly had the artifact been? Who were the Arathan, really? And why had the Vorthak wanted it so desperately? For now, those mysteries would remain unsolved. But one thing was certain. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through brute strength or advanced technology, but through sheer audacity and an unshakable refusal to give up. In the end, that was all anyone needed to know.